Hi, everybody. So sorry that I am late in starting this. Just been crazy trying to get all my animator interviews up for Sundance, and I just posted the last one that will have an audio video component. I still have two more that will be just text only, just over at Rotoscopers. So I have that to do this weekend, but for the most part, I'm done. And that was a really fun experience. And I hadn't been accepted as press for the last 3 years. And that was something I had done before when I was press, is I'd interviewed all of the animators, and so I was able to do that again this year, as many as I could, and that was really cool. And I hope that they see that as like a real contribution that I made, that nobody else is doing. Nobody else is talking to the animators, and I hope that'll help me for next year to be able to get press again next year for Sundance. Well, so we have this live stream, and I have the chat room open, and then also we have the super chat. So if you feel so inclined to help out the podcast, that would be amazing, and I could answer any questions you have about Sundance or being a critic or anything to do with homework, or if you have the way home or whatever you want to talk about, let's talk about. And and so that would be awesome to have some super chats. So this is also the end of the month. We had a very good January on YouTube, which is exciting. Our podcast listens weren't quite as good, but the YouTube was better than December, which is kind of crazy and exciting, because obviously December we have so many episodes and we have Christmas. So the fact that that we had even better in January on YouTube is pretty exciting. And The Way Home has done really well for us. So that's exciting. Like, I knew that the show had gotten a following, but I guess I didn't think that it would do better than One Calls the Heart. Like, I didn't see it as, at least for us, it has. So that's cool. And I'm excited, to see it gaining that kind of momentum. That's really cool. But let's talk about Sundance a little bit. I know it's kind of not typical Hallmarkies, but I just thought that it would be a nice thing to share, because I've had this experience. And so I have seen so far 17 movies at Sundance. I will see two more tonight, and at least one tomorrow, probably as many as four tomorrow, depending on how many online that I'm able to get to. So that's cool. And then I'll see a couple on Sunday. So I should actually be pretty close to my tally from last year, which was 28. I don't think I'll get quite that high. I think that's the most will ever see. But it was a lot harder this year, because even though I had two passes, I had the locals pass and the press pass, they had only two venues in Salt Lake. So that meant almost all the movies were only airing one time in Salt Lake. So if I had work, if I had other things going on, I still had to review some theater this week, things like that, then I wasn't going to be able to do that. And and so it just made it a lot harder this year. I don't know what they were thinking, only having two venues for the locals pass. And it seemed like particularly the Rose Wagner only got documentaries, like 80%, almost all were documentaries, which is kind of annoying. Like, I like documentaries, don't get me wrong, but I also want to see other stuff, with my locals pass. So that's frustrating. Overall, it's been a pretty disappointing festival. There hasn't been anything hardly that I've loved, and a lot of stuff was just kind of meh. So I don't know what's going on with Sundance, but let's talk about it, what I've seen so far. Okay, let's see here. My favorite, let's do it in order of popularity for me, or highest rated, lowest rated. Okay, so my favorite that I've seen. Let's see here. Sorry. Okay. My favorite that I've seen is called Deaf President Now. And this is a documentary about the students in 1988 at this university, this deaf university, that they find out that it's called Gallaudet University in Washington, D.C. They find out that the new president that's being sworn in, not only is she not deaf, but she can't even sign. And that makes them, of course, as you would, get extremely upset. And it starts this whole protest. They're camping out overnight, and they get on the news, and they start this protest movement that becomes kind of this national movement and becomes part of the conversation for the Americans with Disabilities Act, which I think is in 1989, soon after this. And so it was really good. This is by Niall DeMarco. If you know him, it was on Dancing with the Stars a couple of years ago, but he's an actor. And then Davis Guggenheim. And Davis Guggenheim, he really knows how to do these like topical, he knows how to do these like topical documentaries and make them entertaining, not boring. He did An Inconvenient Truth, which, got a bunch of Oscar buzz for Al Gore with a PowerPoint, but he made that movie about as entertaining as it could be. And then Waiting for Superman is about the school system, and it is very good, very well done. And then last year he did Still, which was the Michael J. Fox documentary, which was also really good. He did the Malala documentary. He is really good at doing documentaries, and he did a great job. Him and Niall did a great job with this, making it very entertaining, really good interviews. And I could see them making a feature about this. It was just a good story of these young people standing up against these people that weren't representing them, that weren't listening to them. And so I really recommend this one. This one is good. Okay, so then the next one I would say is Train Dreams. This is probably my next favorite. It's not like an amazing movie, but I thought it was solid, beautifully made, beautifully filmed. And this is by director Clint Bentley. And he made the movie Jockey, which was also beautifully made movie with a good performance. This has Joel Edgerton. He plays this like logger man who is really quiet and really introverted, and he falls in love with this woman, and they get married and have a child. And he's like a logger in the the 1940s, goes all the way into the 60s. And so he's gone away from his family a lot. It was pretty sad. There's a lot of grief and loss, but I thought that it was well acted. Felicity Jones plays his wife. Again, it's a little slow paced. It's not like a masterpiece, but I think it was well done. Next, I would say probably Plain Clothes. This is about this man in the 90s who is an undercover officer. He's a gay man, but he is undercover for the cops, going in and soliciting men in public spaces and public restrooms and things. And then they end up arresting those men because that was illegal. But here he is gay, and so he's got all this conflict, and it's kind of all about like living a closeted life, and I think it does a lot of the shaky cam and from that personal perspective, but I think it worked pretty well. The performances are very good, yeah, I mean, I think this one was pretty good. Next, I would probably say the I have there's like 3 documentaries that I would put about the same. Marley Matlin, Not Alone Anymore. This is directed by Shoshana Stern, who is also deaf. And it's basically about her life, Marley's life, and her, of course, getting the Oscar, but then also being in this abusive relationship. And I didn't know some things about her, that she was like pivotal in getting closed captioning in on television and movies. That was interesting. And so I think it did a pretty good job of like creating this personal story and getting us to helping us get to know Marley. And it was kind of interesting to having companion with deaf president now, being her a high profile deaf actress during the same time that this was all going. So they kind of complement each other, I think, quite well. And so that was good. Sally, this is a documentary about Sally Ride, the first woman astronaut. But it's also, she was a closeted gay lesbian, and exploring that side and her life partner. And it was really good. It was very interesting and good. And then I would say the Selena y los Dinos. I know nothing about Selena. So people that know like tons about her, because I just don't follow music that well. I've seen the Jennifer Lopez movie, but I don't know that much else. So this might be old hat to people who know a lot. But I thought it was very good at showing the more intimate side of her, getting interviews with all her family, with her husband, and showing that side of the artist and not just the music side. So I thought that was good. There was also Prime Minister. This is about Jacinda Ardern, who is the Prime Minister of New Zealand. She got like a big push when at the very beginning of the pandemic, when they managed to completely rid New Zealand of the COVID for a little while at least. And so I remember hearing about her then, and also the fact that she started being prime minister when she was pregnant, which is unique. So they kind of go through all of that, and then it's a puff piece. It's one of these documentaries that it doesn't interview a single person who had any difference of opinion with her. It makes her look like a total hero and paints her in very heroic colors. But I did think it was pretty well done for that kind of thing. And so if you're interested in a very partisan puff piece about Jacinda Ardern, this is pretty well done for that kind of. It is definitely like propaganda-y for sure. Okay, so then I saw, what else? Some more that were more mixed. I would say Atropia. This is interesting. This is a movie about this role playing thing that they have for the soldiers, and this is set in like the early part of the Iraq War, and they create this whole simulated Iraqi Afghani town, and there's this relationship between this actress in the simulation and a soldier. And soldier also cast, and it's got Elias Shawkat, she's in Arrested Development, and so it was fun to see her in this. It's got Chloe Sevigny, and Jane Levy is in this. Callum Turner is in this. Channing Tatum is in it. So it's got a good cast. It is pretty funny at times. It's definitely like a dark comedy, but yeah, I mean, it didn't totally nail it for me, but it was like interesting, and I laughed enough. What else? Okay. There was a documentary called Folk Tales, and this is about a bunch of teens in Norway that go to this immersive dog sled training camp school. And I appreciated that it didn't take itself too seriously, that it allowed for like fun, silly moments between the teens, and you really did feel like you got to know them quite well. But it was pretty dry. It was pretty boring. beautifully shot. And I didn't really see, there was this whole thing with this. I don't understand why it's called folk tales. And there was this whole thing with this yarn throughout. And like, I really didn't understand what they were trying to say there. Um, Another movie, Twinless. This is getting a lot of buzz. This movie is about these two people who meet in this twin bereavement group. And so they've lost twins. And there's a big reveal I won't tell for you, but one of these guys is so unlikable. And what he does is pretty unforgivable, in my opinion. So that was a barrier for me in enjoying this one. A lot of other people won't have that issue because they like the more dark humor. But James Sweeney, he's the kind of unlikable character. Dylan O'Brien's his performance is very good. I think it'll make you maybe think of him as indifferently than you have. This is a very hard R rating, not for the faint of heart. But yeah, I didn't like his character, so I had a hard time I didn't like James Sweeney's character, so I had a hard time embracing the film. But I can see why other people would really enjoy it. We have The Thing with Feathers, and this stars Benedict Cumberbatch, and he plays this man who is a new widower. He's just lost his wife, and I think they implied that it was suicide, that she committed suicide. It was definitely sudden. He was not prepared for it. It's not like it was cancer or something like that. He has two kids, and he's an artist, and he draws these birds, and basically like he gets sort of haunted by this bird, this giant crow that is his design, that is the personification of grief and loss and his wife and everything. And the crow talks to him, and this is just not for me. Like, I really hated Tuesday. That was not for me either. I don't know what it is with these giant birds and death, and I just don't like it. And I didn't like this. I do think I probably liked it a little better than Tuesday, but the kids were quite good, and it did kind of work more for me emotionally than Tuesday, but neither of them are for me. I just, no more dead birds. I don't like it. Birds, these giant birds symbolizing death. No more for me. But I can see why other people might become attached to this movie and might appreciate it. It's very well acted, and it did have some emotion to it, so I get it. What else? A couple others that I didn't work for me as well. Well, there was a movie called Sunfish that was an anthology. Is Sunfish and Other Stories on Green Lake. This is an anthology, so it's like 4 stories, I think it was what it is. And they were okay. I do love Mia Lake, and so all the pictures of like the swimming and the lake, and that was somewhat escapist for me. It was fun to see Jonathan Stoddard, who I've interviewed. He's in this, which is kind of fun. But it felt like all set up, no payoff. I felt like, okay, this is just the beginning of each of these stories, and we didn't get like a satisfying payoff for any of them. So that one, it didn't quite work for me. Let's see what else. Okay, there was a documentary that was an animated documentary. This is the only feature film animation at Sundance, called Endless Cookie. And so I was looking forward to it because it's, animation. I like to support animation. And I did like the animation, bright, colorful. Some of it looked kind of poorly rendered. It looked a little cheap, but I'm sure they had like no budget, but still, it had that like glossy computer animation look to it, but it just didn't go anywhere. I felt like it was like total randomness. I didn't really see any kind of clear narrative of what it is they were trying to say or do. It just didn't work for me. And then we had a movie called Jimpa, and this does have some nice performances. Olivia Colman, John Lithgow, and she plays this woman who has this non-binary daughter. She has this non-binary child. Aude Mason Hyde is the actress, who's also very good. And her dad is gay, John Lithgow, and he was like a pioneering gay man, and he kind of left their family in Australia to move to Amsterdam and be part of that kind of gay scene at the time. She has all this sort of resentment for the fact that he left her and still trying to process that. And so it's kind of dealing with all these different things with like child and parent abandonment, LGBTQ issues and feelings. And the thing about it that didn't work was there were just some very strange choices. The pacing does not work. It's way longer than it needs to be. But also just some really strange choices. Like there's a bunch of odd moments of affection between mother and child that were just very strange. There's multiple scenes where the two of them are in the bathtub together, and I can't think of any teenagers, I don't care what their gender preference is, that would want to like hang out in a bathtub with their mom for for multiple times. Like that's just weird. And there were other weird choices. There's I wasn't sure what they were trying to say with her sexuality. And there's a moment where she kisses somebody that was very weird and then never really talked about again what was going on. So it just had a lot of elements that did not come together for me. Then we have, let's see, almost done. Talked about almost everything. We had 1-to-1 John and Yoko. This was very disappointing. So the idea is that it is about this one concert that John and Yoko did in New York, Greenwich Village, and they had spent a year living in Greenwich Village. They famously did this whole love-in thing or a protest against the Vietnam War. And all of that would be interesting. And the best parts of the movie are the times when you see the concert. But they have all of this padding in there, which was so not necessary. I guess that John and Yoko loved television. They loved watching television. And I can understand having a few clips of like advertisements and other things to kind of set a tone, give a sense of time and place. I can understand that. But they had a lot that had nothing to do with anything. There was like a random Prego commercial, and then there would be like all of these phone conversations that were not interesting at all. Like conversations between Yoko and her manager about what they were going to do the next day, or John and his assistant about an upcoming schedule, like that were just very by the numbers and were not like really interesting or illuminating. And so it was just, it felt, I just got tired of it after a while. And I'm like, let's go back to, they must not have had very many songs. And so that's why they were like, well, we need to pad it in. But it just felt frustrating to me, at least. So that was disappointing. Okay. Then we have one last one from Sundance. We have By Design. This is a terrible movie. There's sometimes people think that just because something is independent, it is somehow like precious, and don't say anything bad about the indie film. Like, and I'm sorry, but they made me watch this thing. It was awful. That it's about this woman who is very lonely, and she goes to this furniture store, and there's this fancy chair, and she basically like puts her spirit into this chair. It's like The Substance, but with a chair and not as good. And the thing is like everybody is super in love with the chair, and they love the chair more than they love her. And so she's very conflicted. This thing was so stupid. I hated every second of it. It was terrible. It's the kind of thing that thinks it's so clever, thinks it's so smart, but it really is not. It's not. And it was just obnoxious all the way through. I can wait for it to be over. No, thank you for By Design. Terrible, clunky, terrible writing. I mean, the performances are fine, I guess. Juliette Lewis, she gives it her all. She tries really hard, but yeah, don't it's not good. It's not good. Tonight I am going to see Lurker, and then I'm going to see Kiss of the Spider Woman, which has gotten a ton of buzz, some mixed reviews, but people are talking about it at least, which I feel like there's hardly anything in this year's festival that people are like buzzing about and talking about. Tomorrow I'm going to see The Ballad of Wallace Island. I'm really, really excited about that. And it was a chance to see that. So that will be fun. And that comes out next month. In March, so if hopefully it's good, and then you'll get a chance to see it soon. So that will be good. I feel like those are the only two movies that I've heard like a ton of buzz for. That and maybe Twinless has gotten some buzz, but not compared to people are saying nobody's buying anything this year at Sundance, and I don't blame them. I wouldn't buy any of these. By design, Cher movie. What a joke. Okay. So I thought it'd be fun in this to talk a little bit about romances, Sundance romances that I've enjoyed over the years. We did a whole episode of the podcast on indie romances, me and Terry, so you definitely want to check that out. But let's talk about some of the movies that are my favorite, that are great. So we have Amelie. That is a really, really wonderful movie. It has such a beautiful color palette and such an energy to it. It's I love the lead performance in there playing Amelie. Audrey Tautou, she's very likable, very sweet. It's just a unique, wonderful little movie. Another one, Last Chance Harvey. I think this one's a little underappreciated. Great chemistry between Emma Thompson and Dennis Hoffman. And it basically, like, she works for the airport. He's in London. His daughter's getting married. He feels very left out of everything, and left out of his daughter's life. They start talking, and basically it's like that whole day with the two of them. It's kind of like a Before Sunrise, but with older actors, and so that's really good. Next up, I have Spontaneous, and this really isn't any kind of order, and I'm not really talking that much about the ones that I talked about in the episode, so if you definitely should check that episode out. I might mention a few, but next up, we have Spontaneous. This is a wild movie that you might have missed. It came out during the pandemic. It stars Charlie Plummer and Catherine Langford. And they live in this town where people will just all of a sudden blow up. Like, it's a dark comedy, and they fall in love, and they know that at any minute they could blow up. So they have to make every moment count, and that's the idea. It is wild and crazy, and I think very good. Another one, Juliet Naked. That title, I think, makes it sound more scandalous than it really is. That's the name of an album, and Ethan Hawke plays this rock star, and Charlie Day, he is the longtime boyfriend of Rose Byrne, and he's a super huge fan of Ethan Hawke's Rockstar. And he runs all these online forums, he's all talking about, and there's this epic album that he made called Juliet Naked, and he hasn't done anything since. And so there's all these like fan sites following what's he doing, what is these songs, what are the layers, all this stuff. And I think Charlie Day's character does some very unlikable things, but they give his performance is so good, the writing is so good. This is based on a Nick Hornby novel, and that you don't hate him. It's a very tricky thing that they pull off, and basically she ends up emailing Ethan Hawke because she's so frustrated, and he reads one of her comments. Anyway, they start going back and forth because she's actually like honest kind of about how she feels about him and whatever. And so they go back and forth and they start this relationship. And so then of course when Charlie, I'm just sorry, did I say Charlie Day? That's not what I meant. Chris O'Dowd. Why did I say Charlie Day? Sorry. Chris O'Dowd. When Chris O'Dowd finds out about this, he freaks out and he, I don't know. It's a very good movie about fandom, fan culture, identifying with things, and they give that character a speech at the end that I'm amazed that it works as well as it does, because like I said, he's been pretty unlikable. So the fact he can pull off this pretty dramatic speech, I think says something to the quality of the writing and the quality of the acting. Very good. Underrated. Okay, let's see some more. There's The Big Sick. If you haven't seen The Big Sick, this is very entertaining movie. It's a true story. Kamal Nanjiani and Emily Gardner, they fall in love, but she ends up in a coma basically with this sickness, and they've just barely like kind of started their relationship, and so he has to meet her parents and all this stuff, and she's in a coma. So it's the writing is also excellent in this, and if you've never seen Ray Romano in a more serious role, this is a really good one. Holly Hunter's very good in it. That one's very entertaining. I have Sliding Doors, Four Weddings and a Funeral. Those are both at Sundance back in the day. The Worst Person in the World. This is basically about this relationship between this woman Julie and her relationship, particularly this one guy, and I don't know why it's called The Worst Person in the World, but anyway, she has some drama, but it's also funny, and their chemistry between her and this guy really off the charts. That one is definitely R-rated, just so you know. Palm Springs. This is a movie I saw at Sundance. This is about, there's this time loop that in Palm Springs that Andy Samberg and Kristen Milioti get stuck in this time loop, and so they have to learn something each day as it keeps looping and looping and looping, and it's funny. And J.K. Simmons, Peter Gallagher, Meredith Hagner, who's done some Hallmark stuff, and she's in this. This is R-rated, but they're, I think, pretty good. Plus One, another R-rated, but this is Jack Quaid and Maya Erskine. They've been friends for a long time, but they decide to become each other's plus ones to all these different weddings they have to go to. And of course, sparks fly. That one's fun. Another one, Together. This is a movie I saw at Sundance in 2021, and it stars Ed Helms and Patty Harrison, and he wants to have a child, and she agrees to be his surrogate, and it's about their friendship that they make along the way through having this experience together. And it's not really romance, it's platonic, but I think very well done. I enjoyed it very much. Rye Lane. This is very good indie rom-com about this David Johnson and Vivian Opera, and they have both been broken up and are feeling sad. He's like crying in the bathroom, and she finds him, and they basically like decide to spend the day together, and they're talking, and it's very cute, and the dialogue is good. It's R-rated again, but I love, there's this whole thing of like, if you don't wave at people on ships, you're a bad person, which is funny and cute. Things like that. I'd recommend that. Let's see, where are we at? See a couple more. Mystic Pizza. That's one that I think the relationship between the women is more interesting than any of the actual relationships explored on there. If they ever did a remake, I think that they would probably change things around, I'm sure, as far as the relationships. But you want to see like a young Julia Roberts, and I think this was her debut role, or at least her first one that I was aware of. So that's fun. There's Waitress. If you want to see what the musical was based on, there's the movie Waitress, about the woman who making the pies, and she's in this. She's not happy in her marriage, and she has this affair with this dentist or this doctor. And yeah, I mean, I actually think the musical improves upon the movie, but it's good. Kerry Russell is in there. There's Ruby Sparks, and this is a movie starring Paul Dano and Zoe Kazan, and it's about this writer. He's writing this book, and one day the character from his book appears in his apartment, Ruby Sparks, and she's like your classic sort of manic pixie dream girl type thing, but because it's his creation, like it becomes more complicated because it's like, is he going to write her out? What's he going to do? So that's fun. 500 Days of Summer, that one's a favorite. I don't agree with these people saying that that Tom was the bad guy in the movie, because she knows how he feels and still invites him to her engagement party. I mean, come on. That was cruel and cold. I mean, she can't possibly be that clueless. So I don't think that I don't think that either person is necessarily the villain, but I definitely think that they are both equally problematic at times. I don't think that she's somehow the innocent one, as sometimes been portrayed. But I love the whole style of it. I love the performances. It's great. Their Finest. This was at Sundance 2016. This was that year that there was a ton of stories about Dunkirk, including Dunkirk. And this is a good one about the big blitz at Dunkirk. And she's writing a screenplay about this, and as a way to kind of encourage everybody. And Gemma Arterton, Sam Claflin, Bill Nighy, Jack Houston, they're all in it. They're all good. That's entertaining. If you want an old classic indie romance, there's Harold and Maude. That's kind of crazy. You've got the relationship between this young man and this older woman, Ruth Gordon and Bud Cort, and they seem like a very strange match, but they somehow understand each other. I got great music. Cat Stevens soundtrack is iconic, of course. So that's great. We have, of course, there's Garden State. I didn't love this, but it is pretty popular, pretty iconic. From Sundance, it definitely captured like the mood and feel of indie films in the 2000s. This was 2004, directed by Zach Braff, and basically Natalie Portman's character kind of invented the manic pixie dream girl in this movie. So I think it's worth seeing just for like its role in popular culture and in movies, but not my favorite. There's Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl. This is another manic pixie dream girl type of story. Olivia Cook, and you've got Thomas Mann, RJ Kyler, Connie Britton, Nick Offerman, and they say that it's not about a dying girl, but then it is. So they kind of lie. It's an unreliable narrator, but it's definitely got that quirky Sundance feel. There's Sliding Doors, and this was actually at Sundance, and you've got your dual stories. Does she make the subway, or does she not make the subway, and what's the difference in her life? And it's pretty entertaining. We did a whole episode of On Friendship about it a while back, so you want to check that out. 4 Weddings and a Funeral. Of course, this Richard Curtis, and you've got Andy McDowell and Hugh Grant and their relationship. I think that Simon Callow is so good in this. The whole relationship, the funeral is brutal, and so that whole scene is very, very moving, and well done. So that's worth checking out. Off the Menu, that this is a little hidden gem that I thought was so good. Classic. It's basically a Hallmark movie, but released. Uh, Not released on Hallmark, but Santino Fontane, he plays like the son of this Taco Bell-esque kind of chain family, and he's trying to find the new big dish that they're going to do. He goes out, he meets Dania Ramirez, and she's this like feisty chef, and he doesn't tell her who he is, and so they start to fall for each other. It's very charming, and Jen Lilly has a small role in that one, but I think that's underappreciated. Drive Me Crazy, that's these like high school 90s movies or romances. I think this is one of the best. Like, it does a pretty good job of developing these two characters, their personalities, their chemistry, everything. I think it's an underrated one for sure. When I did my top 10 of that ranking, I had Enough Said, Strictly Ballroom, Bride and Prejudice, What If, Mostly Martha, Midnight in Paris, Before Sunrise, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, Juno, and Sing Street. Those were my favorites of that ranking. And Sing Street is just such a special film. If you haven't had a chance to see it, it's on Netflix. You definitely should watch it. It's so entertaining. John Carney, it's semi-autobiographical. I love the relationship between him and his brother. I love the moment when he gets back at the principal, brown shoes. The songs are incredible. I love even the ending. The ending's silly, but I don't care. I'm with it. And it's basically about this kid in Ireland in the 80s, and he is trying to impress this girl. So he asks, do you want to be the music video for my band? And she's like, yes. And it turns out he doesn't even have a band. So then he's working with his friends to create this band so he can impress this girl, and it's all very, very, very entertaining, and so I highly recommend Sing Street. I love it. I love everything about it. It's one of my favorite just like movies, period, not even just indie films. I love Juno. I love My Big Fat Greek Wedding. I mean, this top 10 is bangers. Before Sunrise, Midnight in Paris. I love that movie, and the whole idea that it brings up of like, do we look back at the past instead of living when we're living and think, oh, they had it great then. I love that. Mostly Martha. This is the movie that No Reservations was based on, with Catherine Zeta-Jones and Aaron Eckhart. This is the German film, and it is wonderful. They're very similar, but I like this one even better. But the food in it, oh my gosh, the food, so good. But they have great chemistry. It's a lovely movie. What If, I think, is very underappreciated as far as an indie romance, and just as a romance in general. Adam Driver is in it. He is a very funny role as like his best friend. He's married best friend of Daniel Radcliffe, and Daniel Radcliffe and Zoe Kazan have great chemistry. It's a very friends to lovers story. I think it's very underrated as far as rom-coms. Bride and Prejudice, it's so fun. The songs, the choreography, the way that they use Pride and Prejudice pretty effortlessly, I think is great. Strictly Ballroom, so fun. If you haven't seen this one from Baz Luhrmann, it's one of his best still to this day. And then Enough Said, what a lovely little movie, great script. It's about Julie Louis-Dreyfus. She plays this massage therapist, and she starts dating this man, and but she has all these clients who are always talking to her. She gives them massages. Well, this one client starts talking about her ex-husband on and on and on and on. And it turns out, she finds out that is the person she's just started dating. So she knows all this stuff, and it's very good. So that is, I think, everything in here. So let me know what you think what do you think about Sundance? about all the different ones I talked about, but also what do you think about these indie rom-coms? What are some of your favorite? I would love to hear in the comment section or on Twitter. And make sure you're following me at Rachel's Reviews and also at Hallmarkies Podcast for all of my content. I would really, really appreciate it and appreciate your support. Check out the Patreon. We have a Patreon event coming up next week with Emily Ting, who's the director of Girl Hunts Boy. She also has directed, she's directed a number of Hallmark movies. Or written Hallmark movies, I should say, like that big fat Chinese Christmas movie. She did that, a bunch of other movies. So it'll be super fun to talk with her about Hallmark and then also her work, her other work. And it's kind of at a different time than we've typically done. So just make sure you check that time. It's at 3:00 on Wednesday, I think is what it is. But anyway, make sure you check that out. And we give a lot of great benefits for the Patreon members. I really try to make it worth your while, and we sure appreciate that support. So please take a look at that. You won't regret it. And then we have the merch store, which just got completely revamped, which is very exciting. It's a new Dashery store. And so it's gonna have sales prices all the time, low prices all the time. So you won't have to wait for a sale. So definitely take a look at the merch store. We have tons of cool designs. The shirt that I'm wearing right now is one of my designs, but we got lots of Hallmark, Way Home, all of your rom-com. I love rom-coms. I love musicals, all that fun stuff. So check that out. And thanks so much, everybody. We'll talk to you later. Bye.